with AEW stars unhappy over the MJF situation and more. This is Wrestling Hub. My name is John and you're watching the Wrestling Report for June 3rd. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Wrestling Hub Official and also follow us on Twitter at Wrestling_Hub. With the former Pete Dunne being featured on the main roster as Butch, he spoke to Metro about his change in character, noting that the WWE chairman is a big fan. He seems really into this, as you can imagine. He seems really into the idea of Butch. It is entertaining. Not that I want my NXT work to vanish. It never will. It's always going to be there, and I hope people can always appreciate it. But if you could do that, and you could start all over again, and this is me coming in fresh to the company, I think there'd be a lot of people who'd look at it through a different lens. Before leaving WWE for AEW and becoming Jade Cargill's manager, Stokely Hathaway had apparently been offered a hefty sum from his former employer. With Dave Meltzer reporting, it should be noted, Hathaway was offered a WWE main roster contract a few months ago at $250,000 and turned it down. So for him to turn it down, he almost had to be knowing he had a strong deal elsewhere. Khan said he's wanted Hathaway for the promotion since its start. Stokely turned down $250K a year from WWE. With WWE CBO Stephanie McMahon taking a leave of absence, the Observer gave insight into the inner workings after hearing this news. The situation with Stephanie McMahon being gone has been surprising. As noted, she is not expected back anytime soon, and they are hiring people for her Chief Brand Officer position, in the roles she formerly had with the company. She is still on the board of directors. As noted last week, the belief is that if and when she comes back, it would be in a different role. What was notable is last week, when we mentioned some people talking bad about her on the way out, but that one person noted nobody would do so publicly because it would be career suicide. However, the people who did try and get this talked about while remaining anonymous are key high people who were the last people I'd expect to do so. Despite his contract running out and him not re-signing with WWE, Johnny Gargano apparently has the opportunity to return. As it was said in The Observer, Gargano has an open door to WWE, but also the realization that he'll be able to make money but not be pushed since NXT is focusing on younger people. And while he may be able to get a main roster spot, it's unlikely they'll do anything with him. Speaking of returns, former WWE star Cesaro potentially has many options in wrestling, but his comeback is up in the air. As Meltzer said, Cesaro has been laying low for some time. He's a free agent and has taken time off for family reasons with a young child. He did trademark a new name in case he goes elsewhere. It's not known if AEW made an offer for him, but Tony Khan has spoken highly of him. But with the size of some of the new contracts WWE has given, there is the feeling a guy like Cesaro in his early 40s will return because he's comfortable with WWE, even though he recognizes he'll never be used on top. But there's nothing definite in that direction. The only thing we know is he's been in talks with Conrad Thompson about doing StarCast, and according to those close to him, has at least considered other projects that he wouldn't be allowed to do if he returned to WWE. CM Punk took to Twitter to name his faction in AEW with FTR, writing, "One day I rode my Schwinn bike to some dirt hills I used to jump and ride when I was a kid. When I got there were two kids on their BMX bikes. They told me to leave. I didn't. We scrapped. Black eyes, bloody lips. Next day and the whole summer we rode bikes together. CMFTR." With Punk hoping to win the future Trios titles in AEW, he'll be facing Tanahashi at the Forbidden Door event on the 26th. Talking about the initial plans when he debuted for AEW, Matt Hardy said on his podcast, "I actually had a couple options in the beginning. I know they had offered me the Exalted one with the Dark Order. That had been offered to me by the Bucks actually, and I guess Tony was cool with that too, and they were thinking that'd be a cool deal. They were definitely wanting to take those guys in a heel direction, but I felt like after that thing with Randy and WWE, I should debut as a babyface. I had suggested Broken Matt, and that's what I wanted to do. The Bucks were cool with it, and then Tony Khan was very open to working with it, and we were going to do whatever we could to make Broken Matt work. Unfortunately, COVID came in and the world changed. And obviously, Broken Matt, which I feel like is a character that really depends on audience participation, debuts in the first ever AEW Empty Arena Pandemic era show. So that was Broken Matt's bad luck. Also on the show, Matt Hardy revealed that during their tag team match against the Young Bucks at Double or Nothing, Jeff was nearly knocked unconscious. Very early on in the match, Jeff was almost knocked out, so he got hurt pretty bad. That's why he's being pulled from the match in Los Angeles, obviously. So he was kind of running on fumes going through the match. He still held up his end of the bargain pretty good in the big scheme of things. Given the Bloodline hold titles on Raw and SmackDown, Meltzer said that crossovers from the Red and Blue brand will continue in WWE. Even though the company is filled with talented guys, with them focusing on seemingly fewer and fewer people, there is more and more Raw and SmackDown crossover. The brand split from an official standpoint is not ending, but obviously SmackDown talent will be appearing on Raw and the other way around all the time, but with no silly explanations anymore. Brand split is not officially ending despite breaking it on a weekly basis. During the first episode of his podcast, Mick Foley revealed what it will take for him to make a return to WWE programming. "I'm going to break some news here. I'm not going back on WWE television until I'm under 300 pounds because I feel like I've let Vince down. Even if he gets on the phone with me personally and says, 'Mick, we'd love to have you back,' because I've said no on a couple of occasions. I did come back for Undertaker, but I've put on a ton of weight since then too, because I took responsibility to keep my local eateries in business during the pandemic seriously." Recalling a time in 2014 when Bryan Danielson was a part of WWE, Jake Roberts revealed that Bryan was a victim of a home invasion but was able to subdue a burglar. Him and his beautiful wife Bree get home from going shopping and there's two burglars in the house and they see him. They probably recognize him, right? They drop their stuff and take off, and Bryan freaking caught the one, which means the other one is caught now too, and he puts him in a submission hold until the cops get there. Following his promo on AEW Dynamite where he asked to be fired, MJF has been removed from the company's roster page. Apparently many are upset about not being in the know in regards to this situation. With it said in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, due to the nature of the business, many wrestlers in the company, including key people, believed it to be a work even from the start. Some just played it off like it's wrestling and whatever, but others weren't so happy about it. One noted being very unhappy about it, believing that playing games with talent and keeping executives in the dark on key issues was something they had hoped this company would never do, and one called it a sloppy work that in the long run will benefit nobody. When it comes to MJF saying he plans on being in movies and TV shows by the time he's 35, Meltzer would note he might be better served in WWE. If the idea is transitioning into acting, WWE would appear to have the edge due to its exposure, but a WMD synergy with AEW could also happen. Although with one person handling all of AEW's business and its booking and his other duties, there is only so much time to put the multitude of deals together, like we see almost every week with WWE. Fightful previously reported that Tony Khan had indicated to numerous talent over the years and indicated that working talent isn't something they should expect there. Also, there were talent at MJF scheduled meet and greet who ended up having to stay and do extra work in order to make up for the MJF no-show, who weren't clued in of a potential work. A longtime friend of MJF's claimed that MJF was adamant to them backstage that the situation wasn't a work. However, that talent also said that it reeked of desperation on screen to make something happen, and they don't believe Tony Khan or AEW would allow that on television without a payoff or a plan. It would also be said in the Observer that the reaction to MJF's promo was not a part of the plans for AEW, but the key is that MJF was wildly cheered by the end of the promo, particularly when talking about ex-WWE guys who can't lace his boots. A few days earlier, Chris Statlander got a major babyface pop when talking about her being with the company from early on, while Ruby Soho came later, and resulted in Soho being booed in their match, and even more after winning. This was clearly not the plan, but with the crowd cheering MJF, it made the promotion seem uncool. If MJF got a heel reaction, it would be different. We saw what happened with WCW when the NWO became the cool guys, and WCW was portrayed as uncool and incompetent, and how it killed the babyfaces and in the long run damaged the brand greatly. There were a few years of huge business, but in the end, WCW itself had a negative connotation on its own show. It's not the sole reason it went out of business, but in the long run, it did it no favors. WrestleNomics reported the ratings for MJF segment. The 6 highest minutes for viewership in 18 to 49 for this episode of Dynamite were during the MJF promo. The peak of this episode in the demo was at 8:27 p.m. with 661,000 viewers, equivalent to a .51 18 to 49 rating. The Kind Showbuzz Daily reports for this demo. The peak in total viewership was the first minute of the program, which had 1,243,000 viewers. Dynamite often benefits from a strong lead-in, especially outside the demo, thanks to the Big Bang Theory that airs at 7:30 p.m. 5 of the top 11 most viewed minutes in total viewership were during the MJF segment. The MJF promo's highest total viewership by minute was 1,123,000 viewers at 8:27 p.m. Viewership for the program declined significantly at 8:33 p.m. as the MJF promo ended and an ad break began. The lowest point of that ad break had 731,000 viewers, including 376,000 in the demo, which was the low point in both metrics for the 2-hour show. And this was your pro wrestling news update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.